I do think that there's kids who might be very open to like, ooh, let me get a Justice fit, but their phones ain't agreeing with it. Social media is not agreeing with it. Hey guys, it's your girl Cameron and I'm back at it again with another video. And today I want to talk about the lost world of preteen girls. This is coming off the heels of a conversation that I've been seeing on social media floating around, usually in the form of a TikTok video, where people are talking about what happened to preteens and why are there no more preteens?
Young girls don't have no type of representation. Like, they don't have girls their age, I fear. Like,
these girls don't have anything for them. So they go from little girl sizes and little girl representation straight to grown women sizes because there's nothing in the middle.
A lot of people have been talking about how mature teenagers look, whether it was The Game's daughter being posted and her being 12, whether it's Diddy's daughters, whether it's the slew of young influencer girls who are teenagers who don't look or quote unquote act like teenagers. And so there's been this question, why is this happening? Where is this going to take the next generation? And so I want to do slightly more of a deep dive on the topic and why things have shifted. So like, comment down below. Do you relate to anything that I say in the video? And where do you think ultimately all of this will lead to? And please hit that subscribe button if you would like to see more content like this. Thanks for watching, and let's just get straight into the video. So let's talk about the origin of the preteen. I did a lot of research referencing the article titled Tween by Emily R. Perez that was published in 2017. And she talks about the origins of the preteen or the subteen. And it was noted in the 1960s, aimed at girls 9 to 12. At this time, preteen was mainly catered to white middle-class children, but it was a mainly female-oriented term. And one of the first usages of the term tweens in later years was in the year 1990s, referring to those who were between childhood and adolescence. So piggybacking off of this term, it was the in-between between a child and between a teenager. She says, quote, one of the first usages of the term was in a 1987 article in Marketing and Media Discussions. The term was used to describe a market of children between the ages of 9 and 15. So even as early as the 1960s, spanning into the 1990s, we see the boom of marketing towards preteens. It was basically a term coined to carve out this niche group, this in-between age. They're not quite children, they're not quite teens, they're definitely not adults. So how can we cater to their wants, their needs, etc.? Now, the tween preteen group is characterized as kids from 8 to 12, or some lists consider that to be 7 to 15. I would consider it more so 8 to 13. However, this age can change based on the audience a product is aimed at. And like I mentioned before, this term has been more heavily associated with young girls rather than young boys, because similar to their older counterparts, women, young girls are easily marketed to, whether it's products on products catered to fashion, makeup trends, heavy target. Now, in an article called The Truth About Tweens, written in 1999 by Pat Wingert, the article highlights tweens' interests somewhat mimicking the child to adult pipeline that we commonly perceive to be happening currently. The article is about a 12-year-old little girl who defies expectations and defies her parents' wishes, wearing mature clothing, jewelry, and presenting adultish, right? And this is in 99. Pat Wingert says, quote, there are generations stuck on fast forward, children in a fearsome hurry to grow up. Instead of playing with Barbies and Legos, they're pondering the vagary. Why would she add that word? Of love on Dawson's Creek. Now, I was all of 5 months old when this article was written, so I can't sit here and claim to know what preteens were like at that time. However, the fact that an adult is looking at a teen in 99 or preteen saying, you're too mature, you're too adultish, you're trying to grow up too fast. This also posed the question in my head, when we become adults, do we look at teens as growing up fast or trying to be adults because now that we are adults, we get it? It makes me wonder, is this like a never-ending loop of a cycle that every generation says about teens. And I had to think about that before I committed to making the video. And I will say this article does prove that this conversation is not just relative to today's day and age. However, I do think social media is a catalyst. How a lot of preteens are stepping into their teenage years. I think it's really shaping it in a different way than we've seen before. So let's talk about teens then. Now, in this section, I'm speaking about my childhood experience and preteen experience. I can speak confidently about the mid 2000s and the early 2010s because I was a preteen and I was that group that was marketed to. So I know what I liked and disliked. I know what my friends liked and disliked. So let's talk about a few things that were really popular with kids my age, preteens my age at the time. We had Limited Too, which was initially founded in 1987, but this brand was specifically targeted towards a preteen demographic. It was literally owned by Tween Brands Incorporated, or formerly known as Limited Too Incorporated. This business would sell clothes, again, catered to preteen girls. A lot of pinks, blues, purples, matching sets. Everything that you could think of that a preteen girl would seemingly like was this store wrapped into one. And when it reached its peak in 2007, there were over 600 stores thriving throughout the US. Now, Limited Too was transitioned into Justice in early 2009, which is what I'm more familiar with. I shopped more so at Justice than I did Limited Too, but this was my bread and butter. There were shirts with quirky sayings, matching sets. I used to have this 2-piece, 3-piece set that was like a peace sign with pink plaid, and my backpack matched, bows, glitter, etc. This was my favorite store, and you can ask any girl that's my age. I'm 23. Justice or Limited Too was it. That's where you wanted to shop until we transitioned to Hollister and Abercrombie when we started going into high school, or we were around 13, 14, or 15. Businesses like Sweet and Sassy or Club Libby Lou. Sweet and Sassy opened in 2004. It was a salon, spa, party place catered to young girls, and we were pampered and dolled up. And you guys cannot forget the iconic pink limo. Many of my friends actually had parties specifically at Sweet and Sassy's. And although I was the only Black girl, so I will say, like, I was always concerned with them touching my hair. They never knew what to do with it. It was basically on every young girl's bucket list, and Libby Lou was essentially the same story. Not to say that these two places do not still exist. It looks like Sweet and Sassy is still alive. But similar to Club Libby Lou, which was initially marketed at ages 4 to 12, nowadays I would say a Sweet and Sassy is probably more so appealing to kids who are anywhere between 4 to 9, stretching 11. But once we start hitting 12, I don't think a lot of kids are checking for Sweet and Sassy. And then let's talk about media. Disney Channel and Nick shows. We had so much preteen representation that was age appropriate, and we had so much to pick from, whether it was the Cheetah Girls, my personal favorite, That's So Raven, True Jackson VP, Wizards of Waverly Place, Sunny with a Chance, Hannah Montana, Victorious, Degrassi. Granted, Degrassi was more so marketed towards teens, but that show kind of started when they were just getting into high school. That's when I started watching Degrassi, is when I was a preteen. We had Slap Happy YouTube. By that, I mean like the stupid videos, like Scarlet Takes a Tumble, Charlie Bit My Finger, Charlie the Unicorn.
Is the meadow on fire?
No, Charlie. We found a map to Candy Mountain. Candy Mountain, Charlie. Yeah, Charlie.
Stupid stuff. And Dance Moms. I believe Dance Moms started in 2011. Those girls were the exact same age, around the same age that I was. So it was really easy to find representation, age-appropriate representation in girls who look just like you. They look their age, they talked, they acted their age. Based off of that media representation, we had a lot to pick from. And music. Any Disney star, girl, we were listening to it. Disney actor to singer pipeline was crazy. Selena, Demi, Miley, the Cheetah Girls, China Ann McClain, Keke Palmer made music. So we had a lot of music that corresponded with the shows we were watching, with the clothes we were wearing. It was all very uniform. I also want to mention groups like Mindless Behavior, the OMG Girls. These groups, especially for young Black preteens, were huge and all considerably age appropriate. And as someone who grew up during this time, we were not trying to dress like adults or interested in adult things. Not the majority. This leads us to, where did the shift happen? Like most things in the early 2010s to the mid, I credit the advent of appearance-driven social media. It was a slow shift, But YouTubers were becoming influencers. Tumblr girls were transitioning to Instagram baddies. Social media established a new universal standard of beauty, and teens were now being influenced by trends more than ever. Social trends, makeup, hairstyles, clothing, music. It was basically a guidebook of how to be, but not just a physical book where you can turn the pages. It's every second something's being uploaded to the internet. So you have various opinions. And as a preteen or a teen, it's very hard to decipher or sift through what that looks like. And by the mid-2010s, people who were now teens like me were slowly shifting our wants, desires, and needs based on what we saw on social media. What were the standards? What were the YouTubers doing? We had thousands of videos showing us how to do our makeup, lookbooks, get ready with me's, makeup hauls. And a lot of these people making these videos were much older than we were. So as someone who, let's say around 2016, I was 16 or 17, this is when I started to feel the effects of like, wow, I have all of this at my fingertips. However, I'm thinking about from the perspective of someone who might have been 12 or might have been 11 at this time, just going into middle school. What did that look like? It starts to stunt what your teenage years might look like, what you may be interested in. For me, as much as I was starting to be affected by this in middle school, I had a flip phone. I didn't even want to bring it, right? We weren't on social media. We weren't on Instagram in middle school. We weren't doing that. And honestly, at the beginning of high school, it wasn't as serious at least. And in middle school, it was normal. Like I said, it was the Justice, the Aeropostale, the Hollister phase was still in full effect without that pressure. So there became less and less marketing to the preteen demographic. And preteens were uninterested in the products being marketed to them as a collective group. General statement, I'm not saying that every preteen was repulsed by everything that was marketed to them, but you see less and less being catered. So let's talk about teens now. There is a very small preteen market that feels almost non-existent. Now, I could be speaking from this standpoint because I'm 23, I'm an adult. So of course I'm not going to be consuming what preteens are. I will say it's very noticeable from the outside view. And most of what's marketed to preteens are adult influencers or adult imagery. So when they become teens, that's what these preteens and teenagers are trying to emulate. So teens now, a lot of their role models, unlike the Disney and the Nickelodeons, we have influencers and idols like the Kardashians, Easy, duh. Especially Kylie, like for my age group, was a big shift. People like Jada, Ari Fletcher, India. You could say India Love, but I was talking about the other India, etc. Heavily for Black teens today. People like Jody, Alabama Barker, Asia Monet Ray. These are teenagers who are very popping on social media. I mean, Alabama was just the talk of the town. Amongst adults, by the way, maybe a month ago. And these are teens that teens are looking at as the standard. And the closest I would say that you get to a true teen idol are TikTokers, the TikTok stars. So like a Charli D'Amelio, Dixie D'Amelio, Addison, Avani, that are probably the most quote unquote age appropriate, who look closest to their age range, who appeal to a preteen to teen demographic. And of course, we have Kardashian wannabes, basically Instagram models. The one person I can say maybe JoJo Siwa, but I would still argue that she's heavily popular with kids like under the age of 10. 12 is pushing it. Now, as far as fashion, a lot of teens and preteens, yeah, there might be a few who still chop at Justice, but you got the Shein and Fashion Nova. There really is no teen section on a lot of these sites. If there is one, enlighten me. But even the children's sections are mini adult clothing. Children, they're dressing their kids up like adults. Teens and preteens are at this point, like they might as well just order an extra small in adult sizing and call it a day. So even the fashion choices, I could not see a 12 or 13-year-old being caught dead in a Justice fit that I wore. Yes, you might like it, but when you start looking into this virtual world, you're on your phone, you're seeing what people are looking at. That phone, that social media, like I said, it's a force. It has the power to shift how you think, who you think you're gonna be, what your aesthetic is. I do think that there's kids who might be very open to like, ooh, let me get a Justice fit, but their phones ain't agreeing with it. Social media is not agreeing with it. So where does that leave a lot of them? When we talk about TV shows, there's networks like Zeus. Now, I will say we used to sneak watch Bad Girls Club. Okay, I'm not saying we were angels at all, but like Zeus Network, Teens are probably watching a lot more TikTok, short form content more than they're watching TV or YouTube, which has infinite ability to shape image perception, humor, personality, style, and body image. In fictional media, there's TV shows like Euphoria that are supposed to be about teens but have very explicit / mature content. Again, this brings me back to how well Degrassi was done. There was a lot of realistic scenarios presented, but it was not explicit, so it was still marketed towards a teen, quote unquote, preteen audience. Euphoria, you should not be watching that show if you're under the age of 18, and that show is supposed to be about high schoolers. Now, of course, there's Disney Channel, but from the kids I know and for what I'm seeing, that's not necessarily what they're checking for. It's not as iconic as it used to be maybe in the late 90s, the early 2000s, the mid 2000s. OnlyFans, let's talk about it. It is a very common career, or it has become one, for people when they turn 18 to start OnlyFans or to become some sort of influencer. Look at Bad Baby. She started an OnlyFans when she turned 18, and she, I believe, made like $1 million within the first day of it opening. And more I see young children, preteens to teenagers saying, I want to be an influencer. I want to be on OnlyFans. Some of these kids are more set on an unconventional route versus how my generation still grew up thinking that college was the end all. So something like OnlyFans or adult content is very mature work, but I've seen people rush to get there prior to them being that age. And this is not me speaking on teens now, speaking down on them at all, because again, once you're an adult, you look at things different, and every generation has probably said this about the generation before. Where do we go from here? For teens now, it's kind of past a point of return. I think social media, along with for parents not knowing how to set proper boundaries, is a huge reason. While it's kind of just, it's for the races. Also, marketers and businesses have no true incentive when it's currently not as profitable as it used to be. Positive representation can be spearheaded again by TV shows catering to preteen / teen audience, similar to a Degrassi style form of content. Some things that are a little less like kids poppy, you know, like that early. I feel like Disney Channel has become very corny. So for kids in that like middle area, you get older and you're like, this is not it. So if there was something of an in-between marketed to preteens, not just shows, but products. So not making the jump from child products to adult. Teens are shopping what adults are shopping. Teens are buying the same exact makeup that adults are buying. Teens are watching the same influencers that adults are watching to some extent. I think there needs to be some sort of distinguishing. I think marketers could have the power to bring that back, the same way that they had the power to create that term. I don't really think I have a solution. I think the next generation of parents has to step in and do a better job. So thanks for watching. Like, comment down below, and hit that subscribe button to see more commentary just like this one. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.